So if you decide to start remotely in the fall, lots of questions that we received are, what about providing original documents, which means clearing admission conditions? What about paying tuition? What about scholarships, stipends, OSAP, teaching assistantship position, and so on? So I'm going to answer most of these questions in the next few slides. For providing original documents, in a normal time, university basically request for your previous academic institution, I call it home university, but your previous academic institution, to send original hard copy documents to Ryerson so they can verify that you are who you claim to be in your applications, and that everything is clear. So when they clear the condition, you can officially be matriculated and become student. Now, because of the COVID situation, we know that postal services are not working as reliably as before, and some universities are also closed and working remotely. So admission office confirmed that they will accept documents emailed to them from the home university or home institution because of this situation. So you don't have to be worried about if you cannot obtain the original documents. Just contact your university and tell them, and they will email the original document directly to Ryerson admission office. Ryerson admission office will not accept documents emailed by a student. Before that, the home university or also from the notary in your country if it requires translation, but they will not accept documents emailed by a student, so please don't send them that. They will still need it to be sent directly from the previous university. When to do that? I know the deadline is at the beginning of August. Sooner the better. There is a little bit flexibility, and please don't tell them that I told you this. It's possible to do it throughout August, even the first week of September, but please don't wait that long, because all of these documents for all new admission needs to be processed, and there are only several people in the admissions office. So if everybody waits until the last moment, you will not be able to be processed and matriculate on time to start in September. So sooner the better, but you're not going to be kicked out on 1st of August if your documents don't arrive before the first week of August. We know that these things do not always depend on you, but try as much as you can or as soon as possible to mention that. If you have any issues getting a response from your home university, also inform the graduate admission office, so they will advise you how to go about it. This is really in exceptional cases, which happens occasionally, but just to kind of allow you or present that you have a little bit of a safety net here, so you don't have to be additionally stressed. I mean, be mindful and be diligent, but we'll try our best to adjust, to this very unusual situation and make sure that you are not losing your spot because of it. But yeah, keep in contact with your application, and this is also where you will be logging in to see your grades and your courses that you are enrolled in and other issues like financial, academic, and so on. There were lots of questions on tuition refunds. What if something happens and I cannot do remote teaching? You have for example, the student has every intention to do so. It starts few weeks, but there are things beyond their control that are not working. For example, the internet access is not constant, or the internet is breaking, and even though they really want to participate in courses, they cannot. Or somebody was asking, there's this some countries are part of this so-called, they have a process for expedited visa. I know India, China, Philippines, and Vietnam, that if they pay tuition for the full year, then their study permit is processed sooner. And one of the applicants, like one of you, was asking, what if I pay tuition for full year and my study permit is refused? Is he or she lose that money? And the answer is, well, study permit really depends on immigration officers. We really don't have control over it. This expedited visa process for those specific countries is I'm not going to say 100% certain, but it does really gets over the biggest sort of issue in why the student study permits get refused, which is financial, whether they will be able to support themselves. So this paying tuition for full year somehow sends a signal that you are financially capable. But as I said, you never know. There is a time process to get your tuition back in the cases where this is outside of your control. So in the significant dates, there are deadlines for dropping courses or dropping the program to get 100% refund of your tuition. And usually this is first 2 weeks, after first 2 weeks of starting. We are trying to work to extend that a little bit just because of COVID situation, but you'll get informed. But for now, definitely, if you drop the program or drop the courses within the first, drop the program because we're not paying per course. For most of the program, they're not paying per course, except for computer networks and NEIE. You will get a 100% refund, or there's another deadline further down in the term for dropping the program, and you're going to get 50% of refund. And even, if it's issue with study permit, there is ability to appeal for refund for these external unforeseen extenuating circumstances. And with the supporting documentation, you can always appeal. And in most cases, if it's reasonable and it's demonstrated that the reason you have to drop, it's beyond your control, usually it's resolved positively. So that's good to know, because it means also there's another safety net for you, that you're not going to lose tens of thousands of dollars. This is very important for international students specifically, in commitment. There is a safety net, there is a possibility to change your mind if the things happen outside of your control to do that, as long as it's not too far into the term. There were lots of questions about scholarships and what happens if they delay or defer. So Ryerson, or at least graduate students here, usually have two type of scholarships. There are internal scholarships that are coming from Ryerson University and YSGS and the faculty. So some of these are Ryerson Graduate Fellowship, like lots of acronyms, and you're going to learn them as you go. So Ryerson Graduate Fellowship, RGF, Ryerson International Student Support Scholarship, RIS, Ryerson Graduate Development Award, RGDA, FIAS Graduate Scholarships. So you will if you're a research student and some course option students, they're getting some combination of these scholarships for your studies. And then there are external scholarships that are coming from the province of Ontario, from the federal government, and so on, research institutions and so on. And some of them are Ontario Graduate Scholarship, Queen Elizabeth Graduate Scholarship, Three Council Research Scholarship, like NSERC, CIHR, SHRC, and so on. These last three are predominantly for domestic students, but international students also have access to them. They are really for high academic achievements and so on. So just to kind of separate these two, because there's a way the implications of delays and deferrals are slightly different. Internal scholarships, because those that are coming from Ryerson, will be honored even with delayed starts, and in some cases maybe adjust accordingly. So for example, you get RGF, $9,000 per whole year, and that's distributed usually in 3 installments in the beginning of each term. But if you are not coming or not starting your studies in the fall, you're going to start in winter, that means your academic year will only have 2 terms. Therefore, the amount of that scholarship will be adjusted accordingly. Also, external scholarships will be honored with 1 term delay, no problem. With 2 terms, a little bit to work around, depends on some conditions, but it's not impossible. For the full year deferral, that's something that also may become a little bit more difficult, because as I mentioned before, in one academic year, the pot of money, the fund of scholarships and we get for this year, the next year there's going to be another pot of money, right? I mean, I'm being very blunt here. So we don't know how the next year's pot of money is going to look like. And in some cases, it would be possible to guarantee the funding for the next year. In some cases, it will not be, really. I mean, it really depends. So it's hard to answer. We will put every effort if you are deferring for very reasonable reasons, we will put every effort to ensure that you get most of what you promised, but we cannot guarantee it in every case. Really, just does not depend on us. This is something to have in mind as well. And what happens, for example, also that you defer, that money is allocated to a student, the student defers, and that money is tied to them. And then after 1 year, they decide not to come. So that money was not used for somebody else who could have used it here. So there's many things to consider, and it's not that we don't want to. It's really sometimes hard to do so, even if we want to. But it's not impossible. So it really depends on case-to-case basis. So keep that in mind. Research students, MASCs and PhDs, they're also getting stipends from their supervisors. So part of the funding package that you got in your funding offer, it says that you're going to have a portion of it is scholarship, portion of it is supervisor stipend, portion of it will be the contracts that you get as a teaching graduate assistants. So the stipends are coming from a supervisor's research grants, and that sort of really depends on the supervisor himself or herself. And they're very often tied with a project, particular specific research for a specific project, and sometimes they're tied with a timeline. So for example, supervisors are also accountable to the funding agency, and they have to produce certain results or to produce certain results within a timeline. So even if they would like to keep that money aside for you and wait for you 1 year, sometimes they're simply not able to do so, right? So it's not always the case, but it's possible. So you have to talk to your supervisor about the time constraints, like whether they have something that pressures them to move on or to not be able to accommodate delay or deferral as long as 1 year. You know, like 1 term, 2 terms, usually it's not a big deal, but that's possible. So again, that's a case-to-case basis, and we as a graduate studies office, we don't have control over that. It's really based on a particular project. Research students starting remotely, it's possible. As I said, you can take courses remotely, you can start your research remotely, you know, as long as your supervisor is in agreement. Many things can be done from a distance, as I mentioned already, literature review, some preliminary studies, learning new software. So in most cases, I believe, you know, again, check with your supervisors, can be done. Now, and your scholarships will be honored, and that's going to proceed the same as you are physically here. With international student, there are some additional issues. Stipends and TAIGA contract, like teaching assistantships, are paid through the bank. Like you have to open a bank account, and that's paid by a salary. While scholarships are applied towards the tuition, right? So you don't have to, like, it's just going to go towards your tuition, and you don't have to deal with that. But other types of income are paid through the financial services, and you have to have a Canadian bank account. Now, the problem is you cannot open a bank account if you don't have a social insurance number, and you cannot get social insurance number or SIN number until you are physically in Canada. So that's a bit of a hurdle. You know, that means that, you know, you can get your scholarship, but you cannot get your supervisor stipend because there's no bank account that so you can start receiving that funding. But now we are working actually and exploring possibilities how to deal with it. So you can start your research remotely, and then maybe we will kind of increase the scholarship portion and apply towards your tuition in a bigger amount rather than 3 equal amounts. So your tuition is covered, and then the supervisor will bank or save your stipend portion for later. And then, for example, when you join us in person in January and you open your bank account, you're going to get that money, you know. So the bottom line is that in the course of a full year, you're not going to lose anything of what we promised you in the funding letter. So it's just, it may be distributed differently because of these circumstances that we cannot control. Really, these are kind of Canadian laws, right? But the bottom line is, in the course of full year, you will not lose anything what you were promised. So just be patient. We'll work it out, and it really depends on individual cases, on the country where you're coming from, and so on and so on. Many applicants ask about the TA and GA's positions. Well, teaching assistantship. At Ryerson, Teaching assistants are those who are undergrad students and working these jobs, because there are some departments, not in engineering, not in FIAS, but in other parts of universities, they don't have their own graduate program. So their TAs are actually fourth-year students. But if you are graduate students and you're doing teaching assistantship, you are called graduate assistants. It's very tiresome thing. So you're going to be called GA. The question was whether the number of contracts or positions offered in the fall will be reduced because of we are delivering courses online. And I can assure you that's not the case. On contrary, we are estimating that we will actually need more positions to support a remote course delivery, different online tutorials, and helping or supporting faculty members in transitioning to remote delivery mode, helping them, move their parts of the lectures online, helping them in survey of literature for more new information and so on. So believe me, there will not be scarcity of TA and GA jobs, because that's also part of your funding commitment, and we are there to honor it. Together with the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching at Ryerson, we're also planning summer online workshops for current and incoming graduate students, for you guys and those who are already here, how to hold online labs, how to do online tutorials and so on, because the same as I mentioned, professors are learning how to do this properly. You as future GAs will also have to learn how to do it properly. So keep in touch, check your emails often, and we will be informing you about these workshops that you can sign up and do, and it's going to be useful knowledge in any case. Now, the same issue as with stipends, the issue for international students is if you're not physically in Canada, you cannot have a SIN number, you cannot open a bank account, and you cannot get paid. So what's going to happen mostly is that for the fall term, majority of GA positions will be given to students who are already here or who have bank accounts so they can be paid, while we will reserve GA positions for the contracts when you physically arrive. So again, we will make every effort to honor the funding package and commitment that we offer you in the funding letter in the course of the whole year. So you may not get a position, if you are international students, you may not get a position in the fall, even if you're starting your research and courses online remotely. But when you arrive here, either in January or in May, you will get those jobs. So you don't have to be worried about that.